the father of 3 children who died along with their mother when she drove her minivan into the Hudson River, said he is not directly responsible for the tragedy, but wishes he could change parts of his past. Jean Pierre broke his public silence. Wednesday, 8 days after Lashanda Armstrong loaded her children into the van and drove down a boat ramp into the river in Newburgh, 60 miles north of New York City. Police say Armstrong had been involved in a domestic incident at her apartment minutes earlier, and her friends say she was distraught that day. Pierre doesn't face any charges. "I have been inaccurately portrayed as being directly responsible for the tragedy," Pierre said in a prepared statement released through a lawyer. "If I could, I would have changed some things in my past." Armstrong died with 5-year-old Landen Pierre, 2-year-old Lance Pierre, and 11-month-old Laianna Pierre. The 10-year-old survived by climbing through the window of the sinking minivan. Woman driving past the boat ramp on April 12th saw LaShaun waving his arms. The woman, Maeve Ryan, said LaShaun told her that his mother had had a big argument about my stepdad's cheating on her. Before piling the 4 children into the van and speeding into the river, Ryan took LaShaun to a nearby fire station. Rescuers immediately went to the river, but it was too late. They found the van about 25 yards from shore in 8 feet of water, and everyone inside was dead. Family members sang "Happy Birthday" for the youngest victim, Laianna, at the river landing on Wednesday, marking her first birthday. A funeral for the mother and the 3 children had been planned in Spring Valley in Rockland County for Thursday, but Pierre said he wants to grieve for his children privately. After consulting with the Armstrong family, he said the funeral for his children will be Monday, separate from their mother's funeral. Pierre's attorney, Stephen J. Powers, said his client is devastated and is staying with relatives. Powers said Pierre would not attend Lashanda Armstrong's funeral because he did not want to be a distraction. Pierre will spend the day preparing for Monday's funeral for his children. "I loved Landen, Lance, Laianna, Lashanda, and still love LaShaun with all my heart," Pierre said, "and am shocked and distraught by what happened." Powers said earlier reports that a judge had ordered Pierre to stay away from his children were incorrect. He said it is his understanding that a charge of endangerment against Pierre, stemming from when a 2-year-old boy was found wandering the streets in February, was adjourned in contemplation of dismissal. That means the charge will be dropped if Pierre stays out of trouble for a specific period. Court offices in Newburgh were closed by 4:30 Wednesday afternoon, and that information could not be confirmed. Tensions erupted today at a private funeral service for 3 New York children who died after their mother drove their car into the Hudson River. A relative of the mother walked out of the small funeral home in Spring Valley saying, "I don't care. This side of the family matters." Gwendolyn Green, a second cousin of the mother, Lashanda Armstrong, said she was kicked out of the service after she stood up for her 17-year-old son who was being manhandled. "The last straw was when they messed with my child." And she said, Mrs. Armstrong, 25, loaded 5-year-old Landen, 2-year-old Lance, 11-month-old Laianna Pierre, and 10-year-old La'Shaun Armstrong into a minivan on April 12th after an argument with Mr. Pierre, who fathered the 3 youngest. She drove down a boat ramp in Newburgh into the river. The eldest child, LaShaun, escaped the sinking van by clambering through a window and swimming to the shoreline. The soaked and freezing boy was found by a passer and taken to a hospital before he divulged the family's horrific story. The service for the 3 children was held at a Spring Valley funeral home today and was followed by a private family burial in Congers. Last week, in his first public statement since the tragedy, Mrs. Armstrong's boyfriend, Jean Pierre, said he thought it would be best for his dead children to be mourned separately, much to the distress of Mrs. Armstrong's family. Armstrong's funeral was on Thursday. A joint funeral had been planned for the mother and children, but the dead children's father, Jean Pierre, said last week that he would hold a separate service for the children. Armstrong's relatives were angry with the decision. Mourners arriving for today's service were checked against a list before they were allowed inside. Green said she was not on the list, but managed to get in. "You're not going to keep me from going in and seeing my family," she said. Green said LaShaun did not attend the service for his 3 siblings, Landen Pierre, 5, Lance Pierre, 2, and Laianna Pierre, who would have turned 1-year-old last week. It was too much for him, she said. Green said that the mourners were divided into factions inside the funeral home. "You could cut the tension with a knife," she said. She said Laianna wore a white dress like an Easter dress, and the boys wore dark suits. The 3 small caskets were loaded into a waiting hearse after the service. LaShaun told the woman who found him after he freed himself from the minivan that Armstrong was distraught over Pierre's cheating. Green said Pierre was carrying on during his children's funeral. She added, "You have to do for your children before they die." A friend alleged that Miss Armstrong snapped after finding out Pierre was cheating on her by sleeping with another woman. Sharon Ramirez admitted to having a relationship with Pierre and said, "Miss Armstrong was devastated." The 22-year-old said she slept with him for a while at the start of last year, but the relationship ended. She later became friends with Miss Armstrong, although she never admitted what she did. She said Miss Armstrong confided in her about her worries. She said, "On the surface, Jean Pierre and she were the perfect couple, but below the surface there were a lot of problems. He was sleeping around, and he laughed when she confronted him about it. He left her at one point because she wouldn't put up with it. He was old-fashioned and treated her like his territory. She'd had her suspicions about him, and when she confronted him about a month ago, he just laughed at her. When we saw each other, he told me he had kids, but not that he saw somebody when he was. She must have just snapped. Knowing her and how she is, she just couldn't take it anymore." Whatever he said that night, it was the final straw. Neighbors of Miss Armstrong said they could often be heard fighting with each other. One neighbor said Pierre was heard shouting and pounding on her door for 30 minutes before she drove off on the tragic suicide mission. Pierre said he wishes to change parts of his past but is not directly responsible for the tragedy. He spoke out as police confirmed that Pierre, 26, was arrested in February for endangering the welfare of a child. Tragically, it has since emerged that the 25-year-old mother of 4 may have had a change of heart and tried to reverse out of the river to save herself and her children. Only half an hour before the suicide, she left a chilling message on Facebook before loading LaShaun, his brother Landen Pierre, aged 5, Lance Pierre, aged 2, and 11-month-old sister Laianna Pierre into the doomed vehicle. Lashanda Armstrong wrote, "I'm sorry, everyone. Forgive me, please, for what I'm going to do. This is it." Neighbors of the couple said they could often be heard fighting with each other. In April, Jean Pierre was banned from contact with his 2-year-old son, Lance. The order came after the little boy was found wandering barefoot in the snow in February after Pierre had apparently gone out with another woman. He was subsequently arrested 3 days later for endangering the welfare of a child. The father of 3 children killed when their mother drove into a river was heard pounding on her door for 30 minutes before she drove off on the tragic suicide mission. A neighbor of depressed mother of 4, Lashanda Armstrong, heard boyfriend Jean Pierre shouting as he banged on her door, despite the fact he reportedly had a restraining order against him approaching the family. Reports today claimed he may escape charges despite violating the order. It is believed Mrs. Armstrong snapped. After finding out her boyfriend and father of 3 of her 4 children, 26-year-old Pierre, was cheating on her by sleeping with another woman, according to allegations from a friend. In despair, Mrs. Armstrong loaded her minivan with the children and drove it into the Hudson River, 7 blocks from their Newburgh, New York home. Mrs. Armstrong and all but one of the children drowned in the car. Speaking to the New York Daily News, neighbor Latoya James said, "The dad was banging on the door real loud. He called to her, 'Open the door.' He was there about a half an hour. He was on the phone as well. After the confrontation, the paper reported that the only surviving child, 10-year-old La'Shaun Armstrong, then tenderly opened the door and told Pierre, "Daddy, I love you." According to Mrs. James, Pierre said, "I love you too, man," and kissed him on the forehead. A mere 15 minutes later, Mrs. James saw Mrs. Armstrong load her children into a van and drive the 6 blocks to the river's edge. New details came as La'Shaun Armstrong was pictured today grinning as he bravely began a new life just 2 days after the multiple suicide. La'Shaun only escaped the doomed vehicle after climbing over his mother and out of the window as she tried to snatch at his leg to pull him back inside. Tragically, it has since emerged that the 25-year-old mother of 4 may have had a change of heart and tried to reverse out of the river to save herself and her children. Only half an hour before the suicide, she left a chilling message on Facebook before loading La'Shaun, his brother Landen Pierre, aged 5, Lance Pierre, aged 2, and 11-month-old sister Laianna Pierre into the doomed vehicle. Lashanda Armstrong wrote, "I'm sorry, everyone. Forgive me, please, for what I'm going to do. This is it." Neighbors of the couple said they could often be heard fighting with each other. In April, Jean Pierre was banned from contact with his 2-year-old son, Lance. The order came after the little boy was found wandering barefoot in the snow in February after Pierre had apparently gone out with another woman. He was subsequently arrested 3 days later for endangering the welfare of a child. The father of 3 children killed when their mother drove into a river was heard pounding on her door for 30 minutes before she drove off on the tragic suicide mission. A neighbor of depressed mother of 4, Lashanda Armstrong, heard boyfriend, Jean Pierre, shouting as he banged on her door, despite the fact he reportedly had a restraining order against him approaching the family. Reports today claimed he may escape charges despite violating the order. It is believed Mrs. Armstrong snapped after finding out her boyfriend and father of 3 of her 4 children, 26-year-old Pierre, was cheating on her by sleeping with another woman, according to allegations from a friend. In despair, Mrs. Armstrong loaded her minivan with the children and drove it into the Hudson River, 7 blocks from their Newburgh, New York home. Mrs. Armstrong and all but one of the children drowned in the car. Speaking to the New York Daily News, neighbor Latoya James said, "The dad was banging on the door real loud. He called to her, 'Open the fucking door.' He was there about a half an hour. He was on the phone as well." After the confrontation, the paper reported that the only surviving child, 10-year-old La'Shaun Armstrong, then tenderly opened the door and told Pierre, "Daddy, I love you." According to Mrs. James, Pierre said, "I love you too, man," and kissed him on the forehead. A mere 15 minutes later, Mrs. James saw Mrs. Armstrong load her children into a van and drive the 6 blocks to the river's edge. New details came as La'Shaun Armstrong was pictured today grinning as he bravely began a new life just 2 days after the multiple suicide. La'Shaun only escaped the doomed vehicle after climbing over his mother and out of the window as she tried to snatch at his leg to pull him back inside. Tragically, it has since emerged that the 25-year-old mother of 4 may have had a change of heart and tried to reverse out of the river to save herself and her children. Only half an hour before the suicide, she left a chilling message on Facebook before loading La'Shaun, his brother Landen Pierre, aged 5, Lance Pierre, aged 2, and 11-month-old sister Laianna Pierre into the doomed vehicle. Lashanda Armstrong wrote, "I'm sorry, everyone. Forgive me. Please, for what I'm going to do. This is it." The couple's neighbors said they could often be heard fighting with each other. In April, Jean Pierre was banned from contact with his 2-year-old son, Lance. The order came after the little boy was found wandering barefoot in the snow in February after Pierre had apparently gone out with another woman. He was subsequently arrested 3 days later for endangering the welfare of a child. The only survivor was her eldest son, LaShaun, who escaped by climbing over his mother and out the window next to her before the car went under. But he told authorities that, as he escaped, his mother dramatically snatched at his leg before letting go. LaShaun said his mother was saying, "I made a mistake. I made a terrible mistake." He was trying to reverse the car out of the river as it sank deeper into the murky water. The shivering boy was picked up by passerby Maeve Ryan and taken to a nearby fire station, where he revealed that his mother had driven into the river with 3 of his siblings inside the car. He told officers that his mother said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to do something crazy," later adding, "If I'm going to die, you're going to die with me." Ms. Ryan also told police that La'Shaun said to her that his mother went into the back seat and held them all together and said, "If I'm going to die, you're all going to die with me," according to the station. Before the emergency services could respond, Landen Pierre, aged 5, Lance Pierre, aged 2, and 11-month-old Laianna Pierre all drowned with Miss Armstrong. Friends revealed that the source of the row was simmering resentment from Miss Armstrong about Mr. Pierre's alleged infidelity. Photos posted on Miss Armstrong's pages on social networking sites appeared to show a picture of a happy family. One of her and Mr. Pierre has the caption, "Always gone B." But behind the facade she was devastated, claimed Sharon Ramirez, who admitted to having a relationship with Mr. Pierre. The 22-year-old said she slept with him for a while at the start of last year, but the relationship ended. She later became friends with Miss Armstrong, and although she never admitted what she did, she said, Miss Armstrong confided in her about her worries. She said, "On the surface, Jean Pierre and she were the perfect couple, but below the surface there were a lot of problems. He was sleeping around and he laughed when she confronted him about it. He left her at one point because she wouldn't put up with it. He was old-fashioned and treated her like his territory. She'd had her suspicions about him, and when she confronted him about a month ago, he just laughed at her. When we saw each other, he told me he had kids but not that he saw somebody when he was. She must have just snapped. Knowing her and how she is, she just couldn't take it anymore. Whatever he said that night, it was the final straw." In an interview, Miss Armstrong's sister Darius told NBC's Today Show that Lashanda grew increasingly paranoid in the weeks before the tragedy. She told the network that her sister felt someone was watching her, and described to her sister how lights in her home flickered on and off. She also said that her sister claimed that pages of her diary were missing, and that she was constantly apologizing for hurting them in the past. It was initially thought Miss Armstrong had let out one child and kept the other 3 locked inside the vehicle. But the police said LaShaun had gotten out of the car himself. Miss Armstrong's aunt Angela Gilliam said LaShaun is doing good and taking it all in after the tragedy. Ms. Gilliam added that she spoke to her niece earlier Tuesday, and she was not too good. Tina Claiborne, who lived a few doors down from Miss Armstrong, described her as a devoted mother. "I'd always see her sitting out the front looking after her kids as they played in the street. Even her 10-year-old was careful of the others. If they even went near the road, he would pull them away. The children were always well-dressed, well-behaved, and had good manners. They would go to school every day, and the school bus would drop them off outside the house. It's just awful." Jean Simeon, who lived next door to Miss Armstrong, said he never heard any disturbances from the house in his 4 months there. They were a quiet family, and she was always happy. The day this happened, I saw her at about 18:00 p.m., and she was bringing her kids back to the house. She seemed at ease, her usual self. She didn't seem like the kind of person to do this at all. I just don't understand. It's a tragedy. I can't imagine what her family is going through. Miss Armstrong picked up her 4 children from the Young and Unique Christian Development Daycare Center, and owner Desiree Watson said she arrived about 6 hours earlier than usual. Miss Watson said, "It did seem a little strange at first, but she said her work schedule would vary, so we didn't make much of it." On Wednesday, Newburgh Police Chief Michael Ferrara detailed for the first time the fatal 15 minutes that claimed 4 lives at a local press conference. He said that at 7:45 p.m. last night, a relative of Miss Armstrong from outside Newburgh called the police to say that she had just received a call from the mother and had heard tussling in the background indicating some row. The relative was also aware of a history of domestic problems in the past, he added. Officers went around to investigate, but minutes before they did, Miss Armstrong drove off with her family in the minivan. Mr. Ferrara said that when she drove into the water, LaShaun reached over his mother's body and wound down the electric window on the front driver's side and slithered out before it was submerged. Mr. Ferrara refused to comment on whether Miss Armstrong or the others attempted to free themselves. LaShaun swam back to the shore, where a passerby picked him up and took him to a nearby fire station at 8 p.m. Mr. Ferrara said, "From what we've gathered, Miss Armstrong intended to drive the car into the water. LaShaun climbed out of the window when the vehicle was in the water. If that child had not escaped that car, this would still be a missing persons inquiry." Jean Pierre fathered the 3 children who died, but LaShaun was not. Mr. Pierre did not live with Miss Armstrong, said Mr. Ferrara. He said there were no recorded instances of domestic abuse between the couple, but investigators were looking through phone records to see if there was anything of note. When asked if Mr. Pierre would be charged with anything, he only commented that investigations were ongoing. Newburgh Fire Chief Michael Vatter said that when the car entered the water, it sank about 25 feet and went 8 feet down. Passerby Meave Ryan, 31, saw some of the incident and drove LaShaun to the fire station when he came ashore. He was waving his hands, screaming, "Help me," she told the New York Daily News. He said, "My mummy just drove the car into the water." "He is very shaken up," said Mr. Vatter. When he entered the fire station, he had difficulty speaking and repeating about the car being in the water with his mom and siblings. He was soaking wet and suffering from hypothermia. The water was about 40 F. This case was particularly tragic. Given the circumstances, it is all the more difficult for us. First responders tend to be young adults with children themselves, so the ramifications of this with all the alleged circumstances can go very deeply into the psyche of the community. Christina Santos, 29, who knew Miss Armstrong from when she moved into her home 9 months ago, said, "She was very lovely and she loved her kids. She worshipped the ground they walked on. I don't know what happened, but she was always alone when I saw her." The pregnant mother of 2 added, "I don't know what was going on in her head, but I couldn't do that to my children. It was always about her kids. They were her life." Newburgh Mayor Mike Valentine said the tragedy was second to none, and the city was going through a difficult time. "We are a strong town, but this is unlike anything we've had to cope with before," he told Mail Online. Newburgh, which has about 30,000 residents, sits on the western shore of the part of the river that runs south through New York State and eventually splits New York and New Jersey. Prosecutors said Friday they treating an incident in which a woman allegedly killed herself and her 3 young children by driving her minivan into the Hudson River as a triple murder and suicide. Based on all the information available, no one else can be held criminally liable in this case, said Orange County District Attorney Frank Phillips in a statement. It may take weeks before the autopsy findings are completed due to the need to receive toxicology results, Phillips added. The sole survivor in Tuesday's tragic incident was 10-year-old La'Shaun Armstrong, who escaped the sinking vehicle where his mother, Lashanda Armstrong, 25, as well as his siblings, an 11-month-old girl, a 2-year-old boy, and a 5-year-old boy, all died. Police say an investigation into the incident suggests that the mother intentionally drove the vehicle into the Hudson in Newburgh, New York, some 60 miles north of New York City. The woman who came to the aid of the LaShaun said that the boy was courageous and terrified. He kept saying, "It's my fault," Meave Ryan recalled. The boy hoisted himself out of the van's driver's side window Tuesday night, swam to shore, and then flagged down Ryan by the side of a road. LaShaun waved his arms and called out, "Help me! Help me! Help me!" Ryan said. He said, "Mom just drove the car into the water," she added. Ryan said she and the boy drove to the scene, wading into the water to look for survivors. LaShaun said his mother just went crazy, according to Ryan. "She just speeded up and went into the water," Ryan added, recounting what LaShaun had told her. The boy eventually recalled to Ryan that his mother climbed into the back seat as the car was moving and had all her children cradled in her arms. According to Ryan's recollection of her conversation with LaShaun, he quoted his mother as saying, "If I'm going to die, you're all going to die with me." LaShaun told Ryan he resisted and broke free, yelling out the window for help. Ryan said the boy told her that as he was trying to escape, maybe his mother had a break of reality, and she then cried out, "Oh, my God, I made a mistake." She then climbed back into the front seat, the boy told Ryan, but it was too late. It took responders an hour of searching, using dive teams and a circling helicopter, to find the 4 bodies and the van submerged in 8 feet of water, according to Fire Chief Michael Vatter. Ryan said the boy told her that his mother had been frantic, packing her children into her minivan and racing off because she thought she was being cheated on. Before the incident, a relative called the police reporting a domestic disturbance that police say may have involved the father of Armstrong's eager children. That belief is based both on a phone call the relative received in which the relative reported hearing tussling in the background and a history of domestic problems in the family, police said in a statement released Wednesday. Authorities declined to identify the relative. Police said Thursday that they have ruled out potential criminal charges against the father of the dead children, Jean Pierre. Police say they had previously arrested Pierre on charges of endangering the welfare of a minor, which stemmed from a February incident in which his 2-year-old son was found wandering the streets shortly after 1 a.m. The boy was found in cold temperatures, only partially clothed in wet clothing, police said in a statement Friday. Pierre was arrested 3 days later, on February 10th, alongside a woman named Chanel Baez, who police say gave conflicting accounts of being both the boy's babysitter and his mother. Meanwhile, Newburgh Mayor Nicholas Valentine said Tuesday's incident will have a lasting effect on this city. A neighbor, Christine Santos, said she would never have imagined Armstrong to do this to her kids. To them, babies. I would have never imagined it. I'm in shock, Santos added. Ryan said LaShaun, the lone survivor, is racked with guilt, that he couldn't unbuckle his baby sister or teach his 2 brothers to swim. He blames himself, Ryan said of LaShaun, who told her he only learned to swim last year. That's the sad part. CNN's Sheila Steffen and Deb Fyrick contributed to this report. Family members of Lashanda Armstrong say in the weeks before Tuesday's tragedy, she had been acting oddly. Sister Darius Armstrong said in an interview with NBC News that Lashanda Armstrong had said she felt like someone was watching her and that pages of her diary had been missing. Lashanda Armstrong also told her family her lights had flickered on and off. In the interview, her brother, Lenny Armstrong, said, "She started calling family and apologizing and saying sorry, and it was like nobody knew why." The Newburgh police. Chief in the city where a mother killed herself and 3 of her children says investigators may never determine the woman's mental state when she drove her minivan into New York's Hudson River. Newburgh Police Chief Michael Ferrara said investigators are hoping anyone who witnessed Tuesday night's triple murder-suicide come forward to provide more details. On Thursday, police confirmed that Jean Pierre, the father of the 3 children who perished in the tragedy, had been arrested on February 10th and charged with endangering the welfare of a child, a misdemeanor. The arrest came after 2-year-old Lance Pierre was found wandering alone on William Street in the cold with wet clothing on at 1:14 a.m. on February 7th. Police stated that Pierre was in charge of the child at the time. A woman named Shannon Baez went to police shortly after the child was found, claiming at first to be his babysitter and then falsely claiming to be his mother, Lieutenant Patrick Arnold said. Following the incident, Baez was charged with second-degree obstructing governmental administration, a misdemeanor. Arnold said the boy was released to the care of his mother after being evaluated at St. Luke's Cornwall Hospital. Now, 2 days after 25-year-old Lashanda Armstrong put Lance Pierre and her 3 other children in her van and drove into the Hudson River on the city's waterfront, investigators continue to try to find out why the woman committed such an unthinkable act. I don't know if we'll ever find out what Lashanda Armstrong was thinking when she left that home and drove to the river, Ferrara said. Healy to Bruce Campbell said police had heard from at least 2 witnesses who said they saw a minivan speed through an intersection at the boat launch's entrance fast enough that the vehicle appeared to bottom out on the bumpy pavement. She went through it pretty well, Campbell said. The witnesses, motorists who had stopped at a stop sign, just thought it was kids driving fast or acting up. They didn't see what happened next, he said. A steady stream of people went to the boat ramp today, and friends and neighbors gathered to try to process the tragedy. Ashanti George, 21, of Newburgh, laid a single red rose on the doorway to Armstrong's apartment Thursday morning. The 2 women were in the same math class at Orange County Community College. George said Armstrong was usually an attentive student but wasn't herself during a Tuesday morning test. She was off, George said. She didn't seem like herself. She seemed angry, off. That's the best way I can explain it. People lit candles at makeshift memorials set up near the spot where the van entered the water. Natasha Colin and Nicole Callahan, both mothers from Newburgh, were among the mourners. I just wanted to say a prayer for them and the boy who's going. To go through a lot, Colin said. Callahan added, they were innocent babies. Jay Vandervoort of Newburgh, who said he was a friend of Armstrong's, also stopped by the boat ramp. He said he last saw her about a month ago. She just seemed happy-go-lucky, like everything's good, he said. This morning, a makeshift memorial can be seen at the boat ramp where the incident occurred. There are balloons tied to stuffed animals, white roses mixed in with other flowers, and lit candles. With the nicer weather, several vehicles with boat trailers are also in the parking lot. Another memorial, made of 3 balloons and a pink stuffed Easter bunny, was added to the door of her apartment. A picture of Jesus and some religious materials are also attached to the door. 3 lit candles were also burning. Ferrara confirmed Wednesday that the woman and her 3 youngest children, 5-year-old Landen Pierre, 2-year-old Lance Pierre, and 11-month-old Laianna Pierre, died in the cold, murky waters while 10-year-old La'Shaun Armstrong clambered out of the van and swam to safety. And while police say they believe a domestic incident may have been a factor in the deaths, exactly what had triggered the tragedy remained unclear. La'Shaun had difficulty speaking about the incident. He just kept repeating, "The car went into the water." Ferrara said Wednesday at a news conference at City Hall that drew about 50 reporters and photographers from local New York City and national media. Fire Chief Michael Vatter said the tragedy was one of the worst he had encountered in his more than 20 years on the job in the city of Newburgh. It's one of the most horrible, not only because of the number of deaths, but because of the circumstances surrounding it, Vatter said. The question we're all asking is, how did someone get to this point, to take her children's lives, he said. Mayor Nicholas Valentine said he could not recall a worse tragedy in the city's recent history. This will have a lasting effect on us, but we are a tough city, Valentine said. At times like these, we are all one. If anyone needs help, we are there for them. Ferrara said police received a call at 7:43 p.m. Tuesday from a relative of Lashanda Armstrong's, reportedly her aunt, Angela Gilliam, who said the woman and her children were in danger because of a domestic violence incident. The police chief said officers were dispatched to the woman's apartment at 53 William St. a few minutes later, but no one was home when they arrived. Less than 5 minutes later, a motorist who found LaShaun, cold, scared, and soaking wet, near the waterfront, picked him up and brought him to fire department headquarters about 2 blocks away, Vader said. Vader said firefighters learned from the boy where the van had gone into the water and rushed to the waterfront near Gully's restaurant just off Washington and Water Streets. Wearing cold water suits, firefighters Edward Diller and Brendan Hogan plunged into the 40-degree water and began their search. Ferrara said police received a call at 7:43 p.m. Tuesday from a relative of Lashanda Armstrong's. Minutes later, trained divers from the fire and police departments arrived and began a more exhaustive search, Vader said. By 8:15 p.m., firefighters joined them in the department's rescue boat and a state police helicopter that shone a spotlight on the water's surface. Vader said that about 15 minutes later, a police diver, Lieutenant Bruce Campbell, found the van about 25 yards from shore. Divers hooked a steel cable to the van and hauled it to the shoreline by a winch operated by a tow truck. The fire chief said the incident had been nerve-wracking. The question in my head was, how many kids will we find? And is it possible somebody is still missing? He said. As the police investigation continued Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, Ferrara said detectives interviewed Jean Pierre, the father of the 3 youngest children, and the man believed to have been engaged in an argument with Lashanda Armstrong moments before she drove the van into the river. Ferrara said Pierre had not been charged with any crime and added that police had never been called to the William Street apartment for any previous domestic violence incidents. The family's neighbors said they never saw any hints that such a tragedy may have been coming. Several neighbors on Wednesday recalled Armstrong as an attentive mother who balanced care of her children with an outside job. They were shocked by the news. "She was a perfect mom," said Tina Claiborne, who lives nearby. "She took care of her kids. She always was with her kids." Other neighbors said they did not know the woman's name or where she worked, but the children seemed energetic and happy playing on the block and riding bikes. "You know, kids, they make noise. They play around," said Shantae Means, a downstairs neighbor. Desiree Watson, owner of the daycare center that all 4 children attended to varying degrees, Young and Unique Christian Development, said she heard news accounts about the incident at about 6 a.m. Wednesday. She said none of the victims' names was mentioned in the news report, but she immediately feared she knew them. Holding back tears, Wednesday afternoon, Watson showed reporters photographs of the 2 youngest children. Butrick said LaShaun Armstrong is a student at the Newburgh Enlarged City School District's Gidney Avenue Memorial School, a magnet school. Landen Pierre attended the district's pre-K center at Washington Street. Valentine said City Councilwoman Marge Bell, a licensed social worker, had arranged for children at the 2 schools to receive appropriate counseling. Once the bodies were taken out of the van and transported to the Orange County Medical Examiner's office for autopsies, Vader's attention turned to the well-being of his firefighters, he said. "I'm concerned about my guys," the chief said Wednesday afternoon as he reflected on the incident in his office. Vader said he knew some of those who took part in the failed rescue had their children. "Firefighting is a young person's job, and some of my people have kids in the same age range as those who were found dead," he said. Vader said 4 counselors from the Orange County Critical Incident Stress Debriefing Team arrived at the waterfront late Tuesday night to speak with the firefighters, emergency medical technicians, and police officers about how to cope with the trauma they had endured. They were all told what resources were available to them and advised not to try to hold their emotions inside, the chief said. He said he spoke to all of them before they went off duty Wednesday morning. "I told them whatever they needed, I'd get it for them," Vader said. The chief said he was proud of everyone who responded, noting that an off-duty dispatcher, Donna Pawlowski, had come into work late Tuesday night without being asked because she thought the dispatcher on duty, Ishmael Torres, could use some help. After what Torres had been through, Pawlowski thought he needed a break, so she came in to relieve him. Vatter said, "You learn a lot about the people who work for you during an incident like this." Meave, Ryan saw the boy waving his arms as she braked to a stop behind a string of cars. The other cars went through the intersection, but she rolled down the window. "He was screaming for help," she said. "He said, 'My mommy just drove the car in the water.'" Ms. Ryan, 31, told the boy, LaShaun Armstrong, 10, to hop in. She drove the short distance to the boat ramp where he said his mother had driven into the Hudson River in Newburgh, NY. "I got out of the car and went halfway in the water to see if I could see their car," Ms. Ryan said. The black minivan was already submerged. Ms. Ryan told LaShaun to get back in her car, and they drove to the fire department headquarters a few blocks away. It was all but empty. The fire trucks were out on a call. "We knocked on the dispatcher's door," Ms. Ryan said. It was 7:50 p.m. on Tuesday. It did not take long for the horrifying meaning of the boy's story to register. His mother, Lashanda Armstrong, 25, had done what LaShaun had said. She had driven the minivan into the river. LaShaun had escaped, swimming through 45-degree water. The minivan was in 8 feet of water. LaShaun's mother was still inside, as were her 3 other children, identified by the police as Landen Pierre, 5, Lance Pierre, 2, and Laianna Pierre, 11 months. Emmis. Ryan said LaShaun had told her why his mother was so upset. There was an argument about cheating, that his stepfather was cheating on his mother, Ms. Ryan said. On the short ride from their apartment in Newburgh to the boat ramp, LaShaun told Ms. Ryan that his mother had called an older relative and said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to do something crazy. You have to forgive me." Ms. Ryan said LaShaun had told her the call had ended with the older relative saying she would dial 911. The police sent officers to the apartment, but it was too late. Ms. Armstrong had already piled the children into the middle row and was heading to what the mayor, Nicholas Valentine, called a tragedy in this city that I would say is second to none. Ms. Ryan, who described herself as a stay-at-home mom on the way to see relatives in Fishkill, NY, said LaShaun was clear about what had happened. She said he told her that Ms. Armstrong had grabbed the children as the minivan rolled into the water and said, "If I'm going to die, you're going to die with me." She said LaShaun broke free, rolled down the window, and swam out. He also told her that his mother tried to stop the tragedy from playing out, but it was too late. He said that as the minivan began sinking, Ms. Armstrong said, "Oh my God, I made a mistake. I made a mistake." He said she tried to shift into reverse, but the minivan was too far into the water to go back. Mrs. Armstrong's neighbors said she had loaded the children into the minivan after a vicious argument with the father of the 3 youngest children, identified by the police as Jean Pierre, 26. He had been her high school prom date and had worked in a fast food restaurant, neighbors said. Some accounts say Mr. Pierre had helped Ms. Armstrong with the responsibilities of caring for 4 children, on limited means. However, there were tensions between the two. Mr. Pierre did not live with Ms. Armstrong. "From the outside, it looked perfect," said Sharon Ramirez, 22, a neighbor and friend of Ms. Armstrong. But there were a lot of things going on. They had a rocky relationship. Ms. Ramirez was sure of that because she said she had carried on a 3-month relationship with Mr. Pierre last year when Ms. Armstrong was pregnant with Laianna. The first sign of the tragedy involved the argument at Ms. Armstrong's apartment on a hardscrabble block in the center of Newburgh, about 60 miles north of Manhattan. The police chief, Michael Ferrara, said that a relative of Ms. Armstrong's had called 911 around 7:30 p.m., saying that Ms. Armstrong was involved in a domestic dispute. Chief Ferrara said the caller described hearing tussling in the background. During a call from Ms. Armstrong, Angie Gilliam, Ms. Armstrong's aunt, said she had called 911 after Ms. Armstrong phoned her father, who was at Ms. Gilliam's house. Ms. Gilliam said she could hear the kids screaming. According to Ms. Gilliam, Ms. Armstrong said there was a dispute with Mr. Pierre. Things didn't sound good, Ms. Gilliam said. She and Ms. Armstrong's father were so concerned that they drove to the apartment to find the police officers who had been sent in response to her call, but no one else. It was too late, she said. The Hitiquine. Police said it was the first time they had been sent to the apartment since Ms. Armstrong moved there last year. The police also said Mr. Pierre had no criminal history of domestic violence. Chief Ferrara said that the police had questioned Mr. Pierre, but that no charges had been filed. Ms. Ramirez, who said she had had a relationship with Mr. Pierre, said she had met him when Mr. Pierre's sister lived in Ms. Armstrong's apartment before Ms. Armstrong and the children moved there a year ago. Ms. Ramirez said that Mr. Pierre told her he had children but denied that he still had a relationship with their mother. One neighbor, Steve Sheehan, said Mr. Pierre and Ms. Armstrong did things as a couple, recalling how, in the warm weather months, they would barbecue on a grill set up on the sidewalk. But her landlord, John Bubaris, said that twice in the last year she had asked him to change the locks to keep Mr. Pierre out. The last time was 2 months ago, he said. She said she doesn't want him here, Mr. Bubaris recalled, adding, he was here all the time. Still, the day that ended in death at the bottom of the river started with no sign of trouble. Mr. Sheehan said Ms. Armstrong and Mr. Pierre had loaded the children into the minivan in the morning. They would often go out to buy groceries or to do laundry. It was a normal day, Mr. Sheehan said. Mr. Bubaris said he stopped by the apartment in the early afternoon. Ms. Armstrong was home with her son, Landen, he said. He noted Ms. Armstrong had been looking for a job and complained that it was hard to find babysitters so she could work. LaShawn's County Child Welfare Agency issued a statement saying he was safe, and Ms. Gilliam, Ms. Armstrong's aunt, said he was fine. He'll be staying with me, she said. Later, Ms. Gilliam and 4 family members went to the river next to the ramp Ms. Armstrong drove down. The relatives placed 3 stuffed animals and 3 white balloons on the concrete seawall. Then they sat down. Ms. Gilliam wept, and the others huddled around her. She's a good mother, Ms. Gilliam said. Just because she drove a car. Her voice trailed off. Then she said, nobody knows what my niece went through.